Mississippi House of Representatives, District 2, would be Alcorn County. Nick Bain, he's Republican. He's been in since 2012. His education is Mississippi College School of Law, University of Mississippi, Alcorn Central High School. He is a lawyer. His committee membership, Judiciary B, Chair, Judiciary Vice Chair, Agriculture, Corrections, Public Health and Human Services, Tourism, and Ways and Means. Representative Bain is a member of the Rotary Club, Mississippi Bar Association, Mississippi Municipality Association, Oakland Baptist Church, the Alliance, and a board member of the Boys and Girls Club of Corinth. Representative Bain was born on September 18th, 1979 in Corinth, Mississippi. We're going to go over some of the stats here. His district has 21,833 people. The gender is 49.2% male, 50.8% female. The race is 75.5% white, 17% black, 0.5% of Asian, 0.4% of Native Americans, and 0.1% of Pacific Islanders. 4.5% Hispanic. Medium income is $37,947 with a high school graduation rate of 76.5% and a college graduation rate of 18.5%. His part is going to be in this little pink section here of the Corinth, the Kossuth. I'm pretty sure I'm messing that up. I'm definitely not from the north side of the state. The Roscoe Turner Airport area, everything you see in here is going to be what he is representing. As we go through this, let me know if you want to. You can let me know if you voted for him. Let me know if he's done what he's promising to do. If you think he's doing a good job, would you vote for him again? Anything that you need to know or anything I may have missed, put it in the comments so we can keep this going. House Bill 359. This is an act making an appropriation to the Board of Supervisors of Alcorn County for the purpose of funding a remote worker incentive program to encourage workers who are employed by an employer outside of the Alcorn County area and have the ability to continue working while there. I'm not going to read the whole part of this. Basically, this is for fiscal year 2023. He is wanting it to where they can give you an incentive to move there so they can get your tax dollars. Is basically what this comes down to. They can get you to move there if you work remotely, but it didn't pass, so we're going to go on to the next one. House Bill 360 is an act to amend 99-18-1 Mississippi Code 1972 to revise the qualifications of the state public defender, to remove the requirement that funds for the office of the state public defender shall be supplied from Pacific funds, to remove the authority of the state public defender to transfer money between the various funds and sources, to remove the requirement for the state public defender to coordinate the collection. Basically, this just boils down to how the public defender gets paid, what funds they come from, and of course it did not pass. House Bill 409, an act to amend Section 4129-181, was to provide that proceeds from criminal seizures that are deposited and credited to the participating law enforcement agency shall be used to increase the existing budget of that participating law enforcement agency and used to increase law enforcement resources for the participating law enforcement agencies, to provide that such proceeds shall not be used to reduce the existing budget of the participating law enforcement agency for related purposes. In instance of this, when you start taking things to boost your budget, you're policing for profit. That's why now, the way things are now, if we receive money or items in exchange, we do an auction, sell the car, sell the guns, whatever, that money goes into a separate fund that can only be used to buy equipment and equipment related things. It cannot be used to pay salaries or anything of that nature, which your budget does. Your budget pays for your salaries. Keeping them separate, I honestly believe, is a good idea because it keeps the potential of miscommunication or misuse of funds down, because they can only be used for equipment and such related items instead of putting them into the general fund or the normal budget, which could be used for pretty much anything. It didn't pass, which that's with me not reading the whole thing as to what he wants, just reading the title of his is the way it sounds. If you want a separate video on it, please let me know. I'll go over what he wants and what it currently is on Section 4129-181. We're going to move on so we can keep this video short. House Bill 411. It's an act to amend Section 9729-61. There's a lot of state statute codes in this, but this is to revive sentencing options for the crime of voyeurism. to bring forward sections, and there's a whole list. I'll put the little caption right here on the screen. Like I said, I don't read completely through these when I go over these because that'd be way too many pages. I did glance over this one, which is 36 pages long. There's a lot to this one, but he's just wanting to change the sentencing options for voyeurism crimes, and one of them was dealing with somebody that's over 18. It did not pass. House Bill 412 is an act to require post-secondary educational institutions under the governance of the Board of Trustees of State Institutions of Higher Learning and the Mississippi Community College Board to provide at least 50% of in-person instructions beginning with the 2022-2023 academic term as a condition of receiving state funding, which means that if all your colleges, if you're going to go to college, anything of higher learning or post-secondary educational institutions, which is past your high schools, that they want 50% of your training to be in person if they want to receive state funding, which means if the people that are taking all these online classes will not be getting state funded unless 50% of your classes are in person. It did not pass, which I didn't figure that one would be because everything's going to online learning with everything that just happened in the world and all the future things that are coming. House Bill 413, an act to amend Section 1981, which is to provide a time period for qualifications to certain habitual offenders, to amend Section 1983, and to regulate the habitual offenders, remove restrictions for reduction of parole. Habitual offenders is somebody who continues to offend or break certain laws. It did not pass. House Bill 414, an act to amend Section 92323, is to remove the prohibition for expunctions of implied consent violations upon completion of drug court, to amend Section 631130 Mississippi Code 1972, which would provide penalties for DUI offenses to make some minor. Okay, we're going to move on from this one. It did not pass. House Bill 415, an act to amend Section 3739 to align the salary of the state superintendent of public education to that of other executive agency heads, to provide that such salary shall not be more than 150% of the governor's salary, to amend Section 376133. When you start messing with teachers' pay, superintendent pays, those things very rarely get changed. Being that teachers did just get a raise, it did not pass. House Bill 416, this is an act to amend Section 256112 to exempt booking information from the Public Records Act if the person being booked is held in custody solely on the basis of the person's mental health status, to amend 2561.3 Mississippi Code 1972 to define the term booking information for purposes to exemption and for related purposes. Like I said, I'm not quite sure what they're trying to do here, but the way it sits now, there's a thing in Mississippi called CIT officers, which is crisis intervention team. If we go to somewhere where their main problem is that they really need mental help, we have options to help them, and one option is if they're refused by a medical agency and they're going to possibly harm themselves or others, we can put them on a 72-hour hold, which means they're going to sit in jail for under 72 hours, and within that time there will be a doctor that comes and sees them and talks with them to try to get them help and to get them out of that facility into a facility that's more capable of handling their needs. The way our system does it, they do not get publicized. They haven't committed a crime where we're keeping them there for their safety and the safety of the public. This does happen, and their information shouldn't be out there. So like I said, I'm not quite sure what he's wanting to do here, but the information at our facility is kept private. But whatever he was trying to do did not pass. So we're going to move on to House Bill 417. An act to provide penalties for any person who intentionally or neglectfully causes a dog bite, wound, or inflict injury upon another person, and provide penalties for any dog owner or persons responsible for a dog which has a history of biting, of the probability to bite, and neglectfully allows that dog to escape or injure another person. This didn't pass, but I kind of wish it would, being that I work in a county that has no type of dog restriction or dog laws or ordinances, whatever you want to call them. We deal with the same people and the same dogs repeatedly. If your dogs torment your neighbors, do something to keep that from happening. In the same aspect, don't get mad when that same neighbor kills your dog because it's trying to attack them or a family member or destroy their property, because that's going to be the next option. Moving on to House Bill 418, an act to require the toll-free telephone number operated by the Mississippi Department of Child Protection Services for receiving reports of child abuse and neglect to be posted in all public and charter schools, to require the State Board of Education to adopt rules and regulations relating to the content, size, and location of such signs and for related purposes. It didn't pass. I'm sure there's a stipulation in there that everybody was against, but for the sole purpose of putting the toll-free number inside of the schools. Not sure why it's not, but many years ago when I went to school, they come around and handed out pamphlets. So I'm sure that there's access to the number and everybody has access to the internet, so it's not really that hard to find. And that's what they got guidance counselors for that can help them. Teachers, principals, and counselors call the hotline all the time because we deal with them after they call. They didn't pass House Bill 419, an act to amend Section 45-112, which is to increase the pay scale for sworn personnel of the Mississippi Department of Public Safety and for related purposes. Secondary title for this is Mississippi Highway Patrol Increased Pay. It didn't pass. If you want to know what they're currently making, what their current pay scale is, and what they're trying to make it to, let me know. That's an interesting video to find out. House Bill 420. Not the same 420 you're probably thinking of, but it's here. An act to amend Section 3716.3, 371791, and 371793 to require the State Department of Education to acknowledge students' performance in schools within districts, innovation that an administrator in Cambridge assessments or other national recognized assessment to determine students' proficiency for the purpose of assigning school and district accountability ratings. When you start messing with the ratings and your students, and you're walking a fine line because now there's so many bullying laws. If you start putting all these kids on a higher pedestal than the rest, they don't get their participation reward. I could see some parents being mad about that, and it didn't pass. House Bill 421, act making an appropriation to the Department of Public Safety for the purpose of constructing, staffing, and equipment new regional laboratory of the Mississippi Forensic Laboratory in Corinth, Mississippi for the fiscal year of 2023. It did not pass. There's several crime labs spread out across the state, and that's what they're trying to do, is put another one of those in. When we have cases, they need to be sent off. The state has state-operated labs which handle evidence and test evidence. That's where you send your fingerprints off, your DNA test, everything of that nature that needs to be tested. 9 times out of 10 gets sent to a crime lab that is owned by the state, and that's what they're talking about here, to appropriate funds for another one in Corinth. Didn't pass. House Bill 422, an act to amend Section 99-1973 to require a portion of the state's assessments collected under the state prescribing standard monetary assessments for certain violations to be deposited into the Law Enforcement Officers Training Fund, Mississippi Forensics Labs Implied Consent Law Fund, Forensics Laboratory DNA Identification System Fund. Pretty much what they're asking for here is when a fine is paid, a portion of it certain fines go to a special fund to fund all of those forensic labs that I was just talking about and law enforcement training, which a lot of people don't know. When an officer goes through a police academy, the sending agency pays for it up front, then the state reimburses them later. That's the easy way of saying it. There's a whole lot more to it than that. When you pay like a traffic ticket or a fine or something of that nature, not all of that stays with that agency. The vast majority of it goes to the state. So a lot of people don't understand. It's not like when you pay a $150 fine, that whatever agency wrote you that citation or the ticket or the fine, they don't keep that $150. They keep a small portion of it, and there's so many things out there that just pick away at that $150 until it's spread out all throughout the state, with the majority of it going to funds and stuff like this right here. But this one did not pass. So we're going to House Bill 485. This is an act to amend Section 4129-139, the revised judicial district discretion in sentencing and for related purposes. 41 codes is most likely dealing with drugs. It didn't pass. House Bill 538 was an act to amend Section 9317.3 and 9317.11 to authorize the judge to determine if home study is necessary in an adoption, to clarify residency requirements, to amend Section 9317.25 to provide that person who discloses information received during closed adoption hearings or from records pertaining to adoption proceeding are guilty of a misdemeanor, subject to being fined or imprisoned, and may be held in contempt of court for related purposes. This is dealing with closed adoptions and personal information, which it didn't pass. House Bill 539, an act to amend Section 4773.1 to provide that if an inmate is ordered to any alcohol and or drug treatment specified in his or her case plan, that the treatment shall commence within the first 90 days of admission and for related purposes. You can be forced to go to treatment by the court. It did not pass. House Bill 620, which is a long title, an act to amend Section 4512 to include the Commercial Transportation Enforcement Division and the Driver Service Bureau as separate units within the Department of Public Safety, to amend Section 4129107, Mississippi Code of 1970 to amend disciplinary policies within the Bureau of Narcotics to match other units of the Department of Public Safety and remove outdated, unnecessary language, to amend Section 416175. He wants to go through and change a whole lot of things dealing with state agencies. I think this one would be a very interesting bill to go over because there's a lot of stuff here. I'll put the title up here so you can read it, view it, pause it if you need to, but it did not pass, so we're going to move on. House Bill 621, an act to amend Section 97972, which is to increase the penalties for the crime of fleeing from law enforcement in a motor vehicle. That is a very common one, and it happens quite often, a lot more than the average public knows, but it didn't pass, so the penalties stay the same. And those penalties could be either misdemeanor or felony, depending on the criteria of the running. House Bill 622, this is an act to require any court in which an arrest has been made, the person arrested was released, and the case was dismissed, or the charges were dropped, there was no disposition of such case, or the person was found not guilty at trial, to expunge the record of such person of all official public records according relating to the arrest, indictment, trial, finding of guilty, and sentencing of any case, to provide that the effect of such order shall be restored to such person. It did not pass. House Bill 623, an act to amend Section 923.1 and 923.3 to standardize references to drug intervention courts, to amend Section 923.5 to revise definitions relating to various types of intervention courts. Here's one of those ones where he wants to start messing with the intervention courts, which is somebody's baby because this is a new type of court and they're not going away, they're growing. In some instances these have helped people, and there's been a lot of great people who have had drug problems that have went to intervention court, followed the program, and now out in the streets doing amazing things. It didn't pass. House Bill 624, an act to amend Section 975 to revise the compensation of the First Circuit Court District, to amend 977 to confirm that the judgeships of the First Circuit Court District in the preceding sections, to create new Section 9759 to create the 23rd Circuit Court District within certain counties that were formerly in the First Circuit Court, to provide for judges. He's wanting to add a whole nother circuit court system. It didn't pass. House Bill 630, an act to amend Section 99/1971 to clarify the effect of expungement procedures in relation to qualified electors, to provide that any person who has had a disfranchising crime conviction expunged, who has been convicted of any other disenfranchising crime, who meets all other requirements to become a qualified elector, shall be allowed to register to vote as a qualified elector. But it didn't pass. House Bill 882, an act to amend Section 371389 to increase the minimum base salary for school attendance officers by $5,000 and for related purposes. There you go, increasing pay for school-based people, which teachers just got a raise. I don't know if attendance officers didn't, but it didn't pass, so we're moving on. House Bill 883, an act to amend Section 372965 to provide for the revised compensation of the boards of trustees for the Northeast Mississippi Community College District and the Coahoma Community College District to represent the board's makeup as it existed before July 1st, 2009 and related purposes. There you go, is messing with your colleges and your extra learning and money. It didn't pass. I don't see a lot of things passing this year that are going to take money away from the fund and everything because they're in the process of passing the income tax bill, which it did pass, and which I did a video over of it as it was going through the stages of passing. Let's keep those comments going, those likes. It helps out YouTube, it helps me out, and I greatly appreciate it. And this is House Bill 975, an act to provide that the property acquired by the exercise of the power of eminent domain under the laws of the state of Mississippi shall, for a period of 10 years after its acquisition, be transferred, or any interest thereon transferred to any person, non-governmental entity, public, private, partnership, corporation, taking land and pushing land to somebody else. He has a say-so in it. He wants to change a few things, and the state denied it because it did not pass. House Bill 976, an act to amend Section 973251 to revise the provisions of law that regulate the alternative nicotine products, to amend Section 973221 to clarify the authority of the Attorney General to perform random checks, to amend amend Section 67-181 to require holders of a packaged retail permit to have an independent third-party age verification service available on the property of the location in which alcoholic beverages are sold or related purposes. You're costing people money. Right now, it's not a good time to anything dealing with money, because I didn't see anything in that title say that there was going to be a fund put in place. It was state funded. You're requiring people with a permit to pretty much do that on their own, and it didn't pass. So we're going to move on to House Bill 980, an act to create a new section within Article 3 of Chapter 29, Title 41, to provide an automatic defense to prosecution for any charge that is brought within 2 years of a federal declassification of a controlled substance that is subject of the offense and for related purpose. This is going to be an instance to where you'll see that some states like Colorado, other places will have legalized marijuana, but for the longest it was still a federal crime, meaning that overall it was still a crime, but the state chose not to do nothing about it, but the federal government could still come in and do whatever they wanted to with it. This is kind of what he's going after there, to protect the citizens. So if you get charged with, say, marijuana, the next year it becomes declassified by the federal government, then they're wanting your crimes and penalties to change, which would be an automatic defense to prosecution. There's a whole lot more to it. I'm just summing it up, and it did not pass. So we're moving on to House Bill 981. This is an act to authorize any person sentenced as a habitual offender to file a motion to reduce, set aside, or vacate a sentence or judgment, to provide that such person may file the motion of, if he or she has served a certain amount of his or her sentence, to list the information that he shall contain, and the motion to authorize a judge to vacate, set aside, or reduce the sentence upon review of the motion for related purposes. Here he is on another habitual offender law, which it didn't pass. We're going to move on to House Bill 1061. This is another one of those long ones. An act to create procedures and protections for the residential evictions within the Residential Landlord and Tenant Act, to create the new section 89831, Mississippi Code 1972, to prescribe when a landlord may commence proceedings to evict a tenant. So we know real estate's a huge business. Landlords, there are some great landlords out there, and there is some scummy landlords, but there's also bad tenants and good tenants. All say the same. I'm not here to judge either one of those, but this law did not pass. But I'm also curious to know what's actually in it. But you can see by how big this title is, it's probably going to be extremely long. If you want me to go over tenant laws, even though that's not my expertise, I still know how to look them up, and I know how to make a video on them. So if that's what you want, let me know. House Bill 1062, an act to authorize the Mississippi Department of Transportation acting on behalf of the Mississippi Transportation Commission to extinguish any conversations or right-of-way easements upon a certain parcel of land connected in Corinth, Alcorn County, Mississippi, for the purpose of allowing an incumbent free transfer between two nonprofit organizations for the purpose of establishing a transitional halfway residential facility and for related purposes. It didn't pass. House Bill 1063. As you can see, this is another long one. An act to create a new section 97-17-301, the Mississippi Scrap Metal Act. As you can see, all those numbers there, most of those are laws and what he wants to change. It's going over scrap metal, which, like I said before, if you have this many changes, chances of it going through are not very high, which this one did not go through. And doing scrap metal stuff is a big issue now because people are stealing it like crazy and getting rid of it. They're taking it scrap for scrap and getting money. I'm sure we all know somebody that's had a Cadillac converter cut off and scrap. House Bill 1196, an act to amend sections 7351, 7358, 73511, 73521, 73525 to clarify the qualifications of barbers to ensure that no license shall be denied solely for lack of good moral character or conviction of a non-violent felony or a crime of moral. I wonder what's in that bill, because it definitely did not pass. House Bill 1197, an act to amend section 2531.5 to revise the number of assistant district attorneys and for related purposes, which he's a lawyer in this, so I'm sure he knows what he wants to do there, and it did not pass. House Bill 1310, act to authorize an attorney to issue a subpoena if that attorney is authorized to practice law in the issuing court, to require that an attorney enter an appearance in the case of action before he or she issues a subpoena in the action and for related purposes. It didn't pass. House Bill 1391, an act to establish the rural nursery recruitment and retention and Incentive Grant Program Act for the purpose of creating financial incentives to attract nurses to practice nursing in rural and medical underserved areas in the state. And like I said, right now we're trying to place a fund to take away from the state or any other aspect. Probably not going to pass this year. People are already hurting for money, and inflation's at an all-time high. Gas is high. They're trying to do away with income tax to help people. There's probably no way to actually fund that. The way to fund that is probably what got that shut down, because it didn't pass. House Bill 1392. This is an act to amend Section 7544, 71, and 7545 315 to increase the penalties imposed upon grain warehouses for violation of Mississippi Grain Warehouse Law and grain dealers for violation of the Mississippi Grain Dealers Law of 1978 and for related purposes. See, things like this, they want to increase penalties for a law that was done in 1978. I'm not even sure what the Mississippi Grain Dealers is. It's not something I deal with on a day-to-day basis, but it didn't pass. House Bill 1393 is an act to provide a civil cause of action for engaging in human trafficking, for intentionally or knowingly benefiting from participation in human trafficking, and for related purposes. That would be another interesting one for me to read, but it didn't pass. House Bill 1466, an act to create the 2022 Mississippi Education Task Force to review and make recommendations on existing school regulations and the state accountability system in order to remove excessive regulations and provide greater flexibility in evaluating public school things. They don't pass, just like that one didn't. House Bill 1479, act to amend Section 99-1951, 99-1953, and 99-1955 is to revise the authority of the Commissioner of the Mississippi Department of Correction to inflict the death penalty and or related purposes. Whatever was in that one actually passed. House Bill 1528, an act to authorize the issuance of state general obligation bonds to provide funds to assist the Board of Supervisors of Alcorn County, Mississippi, in paying costs associated with funding a remote worker incentive program. Another one of those remote worker things, and it did not pass. And I can see why he's constantly pushing that one, because more people can get there now with these incentives and these hard times. They're eventually going to get their money back in sales tax and income tax and the whole slew of taxes, county taxes, property taxes, and so on. Taxes that eat you alive. Even if they give you incentive to get you there, it doesn't matter where you're at, you're still going to be paying taxes. House Bill 1541, an act making an appropriation to the State Department of Health for the purpose of providing funding for the Rural Nurses Recruitment Retention Program. This right here is how he plans on funding the other system and for the fiscal year of 2023, and it did not pass. House Resolution 29, a resolution commending and congratulating the Kossuth High School Aggies cheerleading team for an outstanding cheer season and 5th place finishing in the UCA High School National Championships. Congratulations to the cheerleading team for outstanding cheer season, and that was adopted, so you will be receiving congratulating and commending. Okay, House Resolution 46 is a resolution commending and congratulating the Corinth High School Warriors cheer team, coaches Leslie Bain and Brittany Brown, and choreographer Johnny Taylor for placing second at the Mid-South Regional Competition 1 through 6A Large Game Day, third at the Mississippi High School Activities Association State Championship Game Day Division, second place at the Deep South Rock and Roll Classic, and 7th place in the Medium Non-Tumbling Game Day Division at the UCA National High School Cheer Championship. Congratulations to y'all, the Warriors cheer team. I'm sure it was hard work, because I definitely can't do none of that, never could and never want to, but congratulations. After hearing that, do you think he done good? Do you think that he kept his promises he did while he was running for a politician? Does it sound like somebody you want to vote for again? Put it all in the comments, and as always, thank you for watching and have a great day.